Welcome back. We are now on to day 1 of Unit 5. So Unit 5 is all about body systems. We're going to spend some time going through each of the body systems that make up you, as well as how they work together to maintain homeostasis. So that leads us to our very first aim, which is going to be how does the circulatory system maintain homeostasis? Well, I told you this word wasn't going anywhere, and I was not exaggerating. So make sure we remember that homeostasis means a stable internal environment. All right, and today we're going to be figuring out what is the circulatory system, what does it do, and how does it work to maintain homeostasis? So that brings us to your do now. You guys have got 2 questions. Go ahead and pause this video and then press play when you're ready to go over it with me. So question number 1 says the human body can be understood as different levels of organization. In the spaces below, fill in the levels of organization from smallest to largest. So if you think back to Unit 2, we talked about the levels of organization and how they build up to create an entire organism. And if you think back, if we zoom into the very, very tiniest feature of your body, we will eventually find organelles, right? Organelles then make up cells, cells make up tissues, tissues make up organs, organs make up organ systems, and then finally, all of that builds together to make up the organism. So throughout this unit, we're going to be talking about organ systems, but it's also important to remember that those organ systems are made up of organs, which are made up of tissues, which are made up of cells, etc. And all of these different features come together to build up what we know as the organism. All right. Number 2, which process ensures that our cells have all of the oxygen and nutrients they need? Well, this process is known as circulation, and this is the function of the circulatory system. So that circulatory system carries oxygen and nutrients throughout the body and distributes them to where they need to go. So that circulatory system ensures that every single cell in your body has access to the oxygen and nutrients that it needs to survive and to function. So what exactly is the circulatory system? Well, the function or the definition that I want you guys to write down is that this is a vast network of organs and vessels that is responsible for the flow of blood, nutrients, oxygen and other gases, as well as hormones to and from cells. So when we say to and from cells, that means that it's responsible for delivering these important goods to the cells, but it also picks up the wastes that need to be excreted from the body and takes them out. So it's responsible for taking all these things to and from cells. And this circulatory system is made up of 2 things. It's made up of the heart, which is going to be this organ in the center of your body. It's responsible for pumping blood, and it's also made up of blood vessels. But there are 3 different types of blood vessels that we need to be familiar with. The first one is veins. Now, veins, whenever we see a diagram like this, veins are typically represented with the color blue. And that is because veins carry deoxygenated blood. Deoxygenated. And when we say deoxygenated blood, that means that they do not carry oxygen. That blood does not have oxygen in it. And if it does, it's a very, very small amount. Okay, so no oxygen. Okay. So what we need to know about veins is that they carry that deoxygenated blood to the heart. They carry that blood toward the heart. The second type of blood vessel we need to know is arteries. And when we see, once again, when we see a diagram like this, arteries are represented in red, and that's to show us that they carry oxygenated blood, which means that it contains oxygen. And because of that, they're carrying that oxygenated blood away from the heart. Now, it's easy to get these 2 mixed up, but I'm going to teach you guys an easy way to distinguish them, okay? Whenever you see the word arteries, I want you to think of the phrase A for away, meaning that arteries carry blood away from the heart. So both of those words start with A. So A for away. Arteries carry blood away from the heart. All right, and the very last blood vessel that we need to know is something called capillaries. Now, these capillaries are going to be these tiny little extensions that you see at the very edge of this diagram. And those capillaries are the smallest blood vessel in your body. These are what provide and deliver that blood to organs and muscles. So they get in the crevices of those organs and muscles and make sure that, once again, every cell gets access to the blood and nutrients that it needs. All right, moving on. The next thing we're going to do is read through this passage, and then you guys have got some questions to answer about this. So as I read through this, I do want you guys to annotate anything that you think is important on your paper. And then I want you to answer these questions before I tell you the responses, meaning that once you're done reading through this passage, pause the video, answer those questions on your own, and then check your answers with me. All right, here we go. Part B, circulatory system, facts and functions. The circulatory system is a vast network of organs and vessels that are responsible for the flow of blood, nutrients, oxygen and other gases, and hormones to and from cells. That definition should sound pretty familiar. We just wrote it down. Without the circulatory system, the body would not be able to fight disease or maintain a stable internal environment, such as proper temperature and pH, known as homeostasis. While many view the circulatory system as simply a highway for blood, it is also known as the cardiovascular system. It is made up of 3 different interdependent systems that work together. The first is the heart, the cardiovascular system, which acts as the pump to move blood. The second are the lungs, the respiratory system, which provide oxygen to the blood and remove carbon dioxide from the blood. Finally, the third is the network of arteries, which carry the oxygenated blood to the body, and veins, which carry the deoxygenated blood, which means it's filled with carbon dioxide, away from the body. In the average human, about 2,000 gallons of blood travel daily through about 60,000 miles of blood vessels each day. An average adult has 5 to 6 quarts of blood, which is made up of plasma, a fluid, red blood cells, which carry oxygen and carbon dioxide, white blood cells, which are a function of the immune system, and platelets, which help blood to clot. In addition to blood, the circulatory system moves lymph, which is a clear fluid that helps rid the body of unwanted material. Now, that passage had a lot of information in it. So once again, I want you guys to annotate those passages. So pick out anything that you think is the most important. So highlight important phrases, write down important vocabulary words, which will help you answer these questions. So right now, pause this video, answer these questions, and then press play when you're ready to review your answers. So number 1 says, what is the role of the circulatory system and how does it work with the respiratory system? So if you remember from the very first paragraph of that passage, it told us that the circulatory system is a vast network of organs and vessels that is responsible for the flow of blood, nutrients, oxygen and gases, and hormones to and from cells. And the way that it works with the respiratory system is that the respiratory system takes in oxygen, right? You breathe in oxygen and you also exhale CO2. But in order to get those gases throughout your body, the circulatory system is going to move them throughout the body. So the circulatory system circulates all of those nutrients throughout your body and works hand in hand with the respiratory system for that to happen. All right, number 2, without the circulatory system, how might our bodies struggle to maintain homeostasis and why? Right, so the circulatory system is super important in maintaining homeostasis, and here's why. Our cells are able to maintain homeostasis by constantly receiving oxygen and nutrients while getting rid of carbon dioxide and other wastes with our blood. Without the circulatory system, that wouldn't happen, and we wouldn't be able to maintain homeostasis. So again, remember the circulatory system is responsible for getting those nutrients to every single one of the cells in your body. If we didn't have that circulatory system, that wouldn't happen. So it's super, super important and able to, in order to help us function and simply live. Number 3, state whether the oxygen and carbon dioxide concentrations respectively would be high or low in the veins and arteries. So remember, the veins carry deoxygenated blood towards the heart. And since it's deoxygenated, that means it's going to be low in oxygen. Remember, no oxygen. And high in carbon dioxide. But arteries carry oxygenated blood, which means that it contains oxygen. It contains O2. So because of that, it's going to be carrying blood away from the heart that is high in oxygen and low in carbon dioxide. Now, these next two questions are not on your paper, but we can review them anyways. So if a vessel is carrying blood towards the lungs, what does that blood probably need to go pick up at the lungs? It probably needs to pick up oxygen. So because of that, if a vessel is carrying blood towards the lungs, it's going there to pick up oxygen, meaning that that is a vein. It is deoxygenated. And because of that, it's going to be low in oxygen and high in CO2. Now, the opposite here, if a vessel is carrying blood away from the lungs, that means that it is leaving the lungs. It's already picked up what it needs, and what it needs is oxygen. So because of that, this is going to be an artery. And that means that it is carrying blood that is high in oxygen and low in CO2. All right, finally, number 4. Why does your heartbeat slow when you are asleep, but increase when you are playing basketball? So this one required you to think a little bit. But hopefully you came to the conclusion that when we are asleep, our body is not using as much oxygen as our cells are not working as hard. And because of this, our heart does not need to pump blood as fast. So make sure you guys remember that oxygen is needed for that process called cellular respiration. And that happens in our mitochondria to produce ATP or energy. Now, when you're sleeping, you don't need as much energy. You're asleep. So because of that, our body is not using up that oxygen as readily, or our cells are not working as hard. But the opposite is true when you are exercising or playing basketball, right? You are using a lot of energy. So you're breathing more heavy to get in more oxygen. That oxygen is traveling to your cells, where your mitochondria are producing more ATP. All right. So with all of that being said, go ahead and complete your exit ticket for the day. And let me know if you have any questions about Unit 5, Day 1. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you guys soon.